just about to go live. All right. I want to call this meeting of the Capital Projects Committee to order. Thank you, my fellow chairman, for being here. And so without any further ado, I'll take a motion to accept agenda or to make any amendments. You have it in front of you, I believe.
I'd like to make,
Okay.
Ladies first.
Okay.
thank you, sorry. I'd like to move fire hole number 7 from item A up to from item I to item A,
Okay.
please.
Second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
No opposition.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes. Any other amendments to the agenda? If not, are we ready to accept it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ready.
I'll take a motion to accept the agenda by Chairman Brown,
Second.
seconded by Chairman Cunningham.
Arlene.
Yes, Cunningham. All those in favor of accepting the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
It was unanimous. Thank you. Next is we have the minutes. They are in front of you. And if you need just a second to review them, we'll take just a minute to look at them. They were of the meeting on October the 6th that we had here at City Hall. So mainly it was updating all of the projects.
So moved.
Motion,
Second.
second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And,
Abstain.
okay, yes, thank you. So at this time, we will have a report from the staff. And Jesse, will you start, or why don't you start and introduce the staff as we go, understanding that we've moved the fire hall to the first item on the agenda.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So first of all, I'd like to thank Fire Chief Scotty Bush. He has really been staying on top of this project for us. And then we have the architect designer from Wold. So Ms. Beth Meadows is going to come up and kind of give us a point in time where we're at in the project and the next steps forward.
Please identify yourself, the company you're with, please.
Yes, sir. So my name is Beth Meadows, and I'm with Wold HFR Design. I thank you, first of all, for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight with you all. I think you all are familiar with the project, but just to kind of give an update on schedule, we've recently completed the design drawings, those construction documents that with the details. We've sent them to the codes department, the fire marshal, and we've received comments there. So we're currently picking up those comments, and we'll send back to codes for final review and approval. And then we're looking, as everything goes according to plan, to put the project out for bid in mid-February. And then have a mid-March bid opening. I'd be happy to take any questions, or Jesse or Chief share any additional information if I need to.
Questions? Yes, Jesse.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Wold did for us was they put together the bid package in two formats. So one was with 2 bays and one was with 3 bays. Because the county has interest in adding ambulance service out there. We wouldn't be able to fit without a 3rd bay. So we have that on our bid packet. So when we go out to bid, we'll know exactly what that 3rd bay is in addition to the 2 bays. But Wold already revised the interior of the building to accommodate whether the 3rd bay gets added or not, to accommodate the impact from having EMS there. So they've done a really good job on that. Costs have come in significantly higher, but we kind of went back to the drawing table and figured out some ways to keep costs down as much as possible. So it's just been a real good experience with Wold, and looking forward to putting the project out to bid soon.
Questions,
I have a question.
please?
Oh, I didn't realize mine was still on. For Jesse, you mentioned the project came in significantly higher. How significantly higher?
I think the last estimate we got was about 4.3 million.
And that's with 2 bays?
That's with all 3 bids. That's with all 3 bids? That's with 2. Is it 4.8 with 3?
4.6.
4.6 with 3.
And 4.3
6 with 3.
with 2, right?
4.6 with 3 bays, and then 4.3
Gotcha.
with 2 bays.
Okay.
So much higher than originally anticipated.
And we budgeted 2.4 or 2.5?
2.5.
Okay.
It's about 15 to 20% higher than.
How much of the 2.5 have we spent? Well, didn't we do for engineering and design?
I don't know to date what we spent, but I can get information to you.
Okay,
on
we
that.
could talk about that at finance then.
Engineering set aside, I think we had 100,000 put aside for previous year's budget for some of the engineering costs.
Oh, okay.
I think we.
So we were covered with that for the engineering?
Covered it with that, if I'm not mistaken. There might be
Okay.
a little bit of overage into that.
Okay.
Oh, come to the mic, please, Chief Bush.
From previous budgets, we had encumbered some money for engineering and architect drawings. I think that was around $100,000. I'm not quite sure how much of that we spent, if we've gone over with that. And the 2.5 million is what the bond was for. Had 2.5 for the station and 800,000 for the fire engine, and we saved, so 3.3 out of the 5.9 million bond. I think that's right. 5.9 was what the bond was. 800,000 for the engine, but we saved another 50-something thousand, almost 60, for prepaying for the fire engine. So there's still a little extra there as well that we could toss at whatever we need to toss at, as long as the board sees fit to do that.
Okay. I don't know who to direct this question to. Where do we stand with the county and them possibly pitching in some of the funds to cover the cost?
Really nowhere further than where we were before, because there's just not an appetite among the county commissioners and the county leadership to take on anything the first half of this of calendar year 2022.
So what does that mean exactly?
It means that they have not committed anything at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still hopeful, and we're working on a couple other projects with them. Namely the intersection at Stop 30 and Old Drakes Creek Road. And so they're coming along and working in a better partnership than they have in the past. But a request this big, they're waiting until some other things happen
Well, the
publicly.
intersection at Stop 30 and Drake's Creek,
I'm sorry, not Stop 30, New Shackle and Old Drakes Creek.
but that's not city property, is that?
It's not, and that's why it's important that they contribute toward it and that they continue to manage it. But we were successful in getting them to move faster and working in a partnership with us. So considering that they're working in a partnership there, we think that it's more likely they'll work in a partnership for the fire hall. However, that's a much bigger ask.
Okay, so help me understand, why would we fix a road that we don't own?
Do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to wait until we get to it later on? I'm fine.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we could.
Yeah. But my point is that
Yeah.
we're trying to bring them together in a partnership with us, and so we've got them
Okay.
on board for something small.
Okay, I didn't mean to
You're
get
fine,
off
you're fine.
the subject of the fire hall.
Yeah. There's just not an appetite among county commissioners this late in their term, I'll put it that way.
So when is the appetite going to be there? I mean, do we have a date?
Probably after May.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so once the bids are in March, mid-March, May is 2 months away. So would it be realistic that we could start talks at that time?
Oh, we're talking consistently with them. Just
Oh, okay.
nobody's willing to commit to anything.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I see crazy erroneous information about the fire hall and the county, and it's so bizarre. It's so bizarre.
I called somebody out for that and asked for some proof of some of the information they were providing.
Just a case in point, there's a volunteer fire department across the street from the beach schools where my grandchildren attend, and their response time there to be across the street is 14, 15 minutes because nobody's at the fire hall, versus what fire hall number 7 could do, a lot quicker response time, where thousands of children's lives could be at stake. So that doesn't make any sense. And the bizarre information out there is just, I don't know who's putting it out, but it's just.
I think the only thing I'd add is we have no intention of closing down Shackle Island Fire
No,
Department.
no, we're
anything
absolutely
like that.
not.
Yeah, we have no intention at all.
No, absolutely not. I mean, they serve,
Yeah, and we hope they continue working with us, and we work
they
with them.
serve as, I mean, we've given them, haven't we donated equipment to them and
Bush is
and
shaking his
such
head
over
yes.
the years?
Don't worry about coming up here. I got you covered.
Yeah, so, anyway,
You know,
I don't know if you want to add anything.
yeah, I do. The fact is that we are providing fire insurance to a large part of the county. And when there are calls for fires, we respond because the volunteer fire department consistently, I think, calls for our help. And so we're providing fire insurance for a large number of county residents, and city residents are paying for it. So it seems to me nothing but fair for them to help contribute toward this fire hall, and I think there may be a better appetite after the time frame after we get the bid in, because I guess if we don't get help from the county, we're going with the smaller version. We're going with the 4.3, and hopefully the bids will come in under that. There's no need for us to put a bay for a EMS, if the county's not going to help us. In my opinion, I can't support it. So anyway, I know that the staff, I know Chief Bush, and I know the mayor is working with the county, and that's a delicate tightrope to balance on. And so hopefully we'll get some, after the bids come in and we share with the county, we'll get some more favorable responses from the county later in the spring.
And I just wanted to add as well that we have worked on an MOU and we've submitted it to the county. And in that, we outline some responsibility that we would have in an automatic aid to respond to those areas. So that's already been submitted to them. They're reviewing it. So Chief Bush, the mayor, and I have spent some time working on that, and it's in their court.
Is the contingency included in these figures? It is. So this
Yes.
includes the contingency.
It does.
Okay.
Both, we typically do a design and construction contingency.
Okay, perfect.
Can I say one more thing?
The question with a price increase, when we, it's always, we always kind of say, it's not going to get any cheaper, the construction cost, and especially with the bid environment now, supply and demand concerns. So it is really hard to say for a fact. We were starting to see some kind of lead times leveling off, and then I've heard in the last few days that's kind of picking back up again, and it's probably just with the resurgence, with COVID. So it's definitely tricky. We don't see prices going down anytime soon, so it's really something to take into account. And if you have the funds available to go ahead and put the project out for bid.
Sure,
That's-
I completely agree that we get this out to bid as soon as possible. I mean, it is a microclimate right now in materials acquisition, and so I would agree, we need to kind of get off the pot here and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the fire hall?
Well, I just wanted to make another comment,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman.
Please, go ahead.
And I just want the county to remember this, that not too long ago, we added an addition to Fire Hall, is it five, to accommodate their EMS equipment at a cost that the city bore alone. We didn't ask the county to contribute at all, in excess of $600,000, right? So we probably should have asked for some assistance back at that time, which we didn't, but we need to remind them about that information, about that. And we did it specifically to accommodate their EMS equipment and vehicle. I mean, we benefited greatly from it because it's right smack next to the hospital. I'm not saying that we didn't benefit from that, but we also able to house their equipment. So that might be a little bit of a reminder to them. Thank you.
Chairman Brown, do you have anything?
Yes, sir, thank you. I would have a tendency to agree with both of the ladies on my left to a point. I don't know that we need to continue to remind the county that we've spent money on a blowout wall. You know, they know that. And the fact is we have to have we need the ambulance service there. You know, we don't have the ambulance service, so we put our own people within 37075 in jeopardy. So, I, for one, have been after the county to give us some money now, 2.5, 3 years, trying to shake that tree a little bit. And I know Chief Bush has, the mayor certainly has. I've been in conversation with the chairman of the finance committee. He's my commissioner and in my ward, and we've talked several times. But to be honest, it's election year. But nobody's going to do that. If they want to do it, they're not going to do it until 5 or 6 months down the road from now. And here's just my opinion. You know, we've been talking about a fire hall 3 years, Scotty, minimum up there. Since Durham Farms really got kicked in gear and the school was built and stuff, we've really talked about putting another fire hall up there. We're past the talking point a little bit. We've got some work that's been done on it, and we kind of know where we're going. There's been some estimates, and those estimates do seem to be getting bigger every day. I hope it levels out. The construction people that I talked to today didn't think it was. Think spring's coming, so there's going to be more demand. So I would say this. I love living in Sumner County, and I love living in Hendersonville, Tennessee. But I don't feel like it's the county's responsibility to build a fire hall in the city I live in. I certainly would love their help. I think they know that. I've asked them more than one time for that. But I think we're at a point that we decide we're going to go ahead and build a fire hall, or we're not going to build a fire hall. Right now, we're letting our hopes of getting some money from the county dictate what we do as city leaders and for our citizens. I don't think that's the right thing to do. In other conversations I've had in the last couple days, we can build this fire hall and ask the county still to contribute once the season is over with and they get into their budget time. I don't think they're going to forget us. I think there's been too much work put in it. The mayor's put a lot of work in it. Like I said, Scotty's had conversations. I've had conversations. Jesse's had conversations. Hendersonville's going to be here. That county building's going to be up there, and there's going to be commissioners in it that have to service us every day just like we service our citizens. So I would urge this committee and this board, and not all of us are here tonight, but when Bowman gets here, to absolutely consider going and building this fire hall. I had a discussion today with the gentleman that runs our finance department, and I pretty well trust what he tells me, and we talked about fire hall. According to him, we can pay for the fire hall. Our revenues are up that much that we take what we bonded and we can pull some and we can pay for the fire hall if it comes in at 4.3. We don't do that, we have enough room that we can bond $2 million to add to the 2.5 we have to pay for the fire hall. So, my opinion is we build the fire hall. Let's get it out, let's get it done, let's get the bids out. The bids may come in and we go, oh my goodness, maybe we can't build a fire hall now. There's $7 million. I don't think that'll happen. I think we're pretty close. I think you'll give us good work and good estimates. So, I believe the money's there if we manage it right. You know, I ask another question, what about paving? We can do it and still add money to the paving budget. Okay, that's important with everybody. So I think we have to admit our revenues are much more than we ever expected they would be. We've had the weirdest 24 months that's probably ever happened in this world, and our revenues in this city are up almost 20%. I think it's time we spend some of that 20% and get this fire hall built and not wait on the county. It's my opinion.
Thank you, Chairman Brown, and I agree with that sentiment, and I don't think that the plan that we've outlined today is any indication that we're slow walking or waiting. We're going forward with the bid process, and then once the bids come in, then we'll have to meet again and decide how we pay for it. But I agree with you. I mean, this fire hall is needed for the protection of our citizens and in I think the fastest growing area of our city. I constantly get requests from residents of Durham Farms and other residents over there that, you know, when are we going to get it? So I think that the board is still committed, Chief and Mayor, to this project, and I look forward to getting the bids out and seeing what the bids are, and then our continued negotiations with the county. You know, if the county elects not to help us, as they've helped, I think, in the Portland, they helped at the Portland Fire Station, the city of Portland. If they don't help, then I think that this board, and especially the Public Safety Committee, will have to start having discussions on how long do city residents subsidize county emergency services. And I think that would be a worthy discussion, not at this time, but later down the road. So thank you. So any other discussion? If not, we'll move on. Thank you. I think it's a good discussion. Next is the old item A, Saundersville Road. Sarah, I think you've got a summary on each of the next projects. So we'll go through the summary and then ask if there's any questions and then move right along. So thank you.
Okay,
Ms. Locke.
thank you. Saundersville Road, LIC, we've been making quite a bit of progress. We recently received our notice to proceed on right-of-way. That was in November. So I've been coordinating with our consultants. There were some additional tracks that were identified through the creation of the right-of-way plans that needed right-of-way acquired. And so those were not included in the initial scope with the consultants. And so we will be expecting an amendment to acquire those additional parcels. And also, I've asked them to include some line items for grant applications. The mayor recently spoke with some representatives in Washington, kind of advocating for this project and highlighting it so that when we do apply for these very large grants, that they'll have heard about it and have some frame of reference for it. So I think we might be in a pretty good position for some of those grant applications that we're going to look at submitting this year, excuse me. So our next steps for this project, we will expect an amendment for the scope with the consultants. They are already beginning work on right-of-way, but we will have an amendment for those additions. And then the time to construction is anticipated to be approximately a year, 9 months, approximately, but that is pending obtaining funding for construction. This grant for this project is currently only funded through the end of right-of-way, and then construction is 100% local responsibility. So, so it will be very important to aggressively pursue grant opportunities. And then time to completion, if that falls into place and we are awarded grants, and with this new infrastructure bill as well, there are possibly even more opportunities available for funding, which is a positive. So if all that works out, we are potentially looking about 3 years and 9 months to completion of that project. That is possibly optimistic, just depending on that funding level.
Questions? Ms. Locke? I have a question. What's the latest negotiations with the railroad? Are they going to make us lay a spur track
Yes.
while we construct the tunnel?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And,
That was part of the cost increase for that project for construction.
yeah. And so we're in the process of now purchasing right-of-ways, and are we, 80% through with the purchasing of the right-of-ways?
We just received notice to proceed, so we are just in the very early stages of that phase. So we haven't purchased anything.
And the state will fund how much of the purchase of the right-of-ways?
This is a 50-50
Okay.
funding level for this project.
Okay. Okay. Any questions? Yes, Mayor?
So I was scheduled to go to D.C. Back in November, really just for 2 days to meet with the folks involved with the Chrissy Grant and the, I think it's Build Grant. They've changed some of the acronyms recently. And I ended up with a cold, and I knew they weren't going to let me on the plane, so we rescheduled with those folks and got to do a Zoom call with one of the people that I was going to meet with, and then a phone call with the other. Part of the reason that I was planning to go is because our consultants on that said, what we're missing is face-to-face contact with these decision makers. So it made sense to go do that, especially when we anticipated that there was sort of a gap in some of the decision making that was happening. However, 60% of my conversations with each of those folks was all about the infrastructure bill that's going through Congress. So here I am talking about these grants that have been, that have been part of programs for several months, and they're saying, y'all are moving along, you're doing what's needed to be done, but there's going to be a bunch more money that's coming up that's available. And Jesse's looked into that an awful lot about what the infrastructure bill could possibly, how it could possibly benefit us. So in addition to these grants, there's probably coming money through the state of Tennessee, through the GNRC that we could apply for.
Do we know how the state's going to allocate those funds yet? Do we know
I don't think the
how
state
much? Do we know how much the state's going to receive of the infrastructure money that the Congress passed?
I think it's still being decided, but do you want to try that one?
Okay. 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 Thank you. Sarah?
No other questions?
No.
Okay. So moving on to Standards Ferry multi-use path. The consultant, we did receive, I think I updated last time that we did receive the core and TDEC permits. Those were all in place. The consultant has finalized all of the bid information again and submitted to TDOT for approval to rebid the project. They have not given us approval yet. I've been sending myself weekly updates, and the consultant has as well, but we haven't received that approval quite yet. Next step, of course, to rebid the project and address funding if applicable. I think for a lot of our projects, we're going to find that construction costs have increased. So I think that's just something we're going to have to keep in mind as those bids roll in. We'll probably be taking a look at several projects. Time to construction, I would say approximately 4 months, so possibly in May. Time to completion, I would anticipate a year for construction, so I would say probably May 2023. We would have it constructed if we receive the approval to go to bid soon and have the funding level in place.
Will that facility be under the Parks Department? Is that who supervises the greenways and the
I think planning oversees a lot of the greenways. As far as maintenance, though, typically I think they call on Public Works.
Okay.
for that effort.
Okay.
Andy, is that? Okay.
Repeat that, just.
So inside of the Parks Department manages that. Outside of the parks, it is Public Works for maintenance.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. We have light synchronization. That project, on December 22nd, our consultants resubmitted the revised construction documents to address the comments from TDOT. Additionally, one of the comments that was made was requiring an environmental reevaluation. And through some conversations, we were able to come to an agreement that our consultant could submit just a revised evaluation and kind of have that as a memo to file, not as formal and not as large of an effort and not as time consuming, which was really good news. So I haven't received anything back yet. We typically anticipate at least a 30-day turnaround for comments from TDOT, so it is early still. With this project, it is also anticipated that additional funding will be needed. This is a Cmat Grant. It is 100% funded, but when the last we put it out to bid, which was about 2 years ago, the low bid was in the 900,000s, and we can anticipate it's gone up quite a bit. And at that time, we had 800,000 in the grant. So once we put that out to bid and receive those, we will come back looking at ways to fund that project as well. Time for construction on that, I would, if we do receive approval from this submittal, I would anticipate that we would be moving to construction within 4 months. Gives us time to put those out to bid and bid opening. Time to completion, it shouldn't take more than a year to construct that project as well. So I would anticipate that being May 2023, unless we go through additional iterations of comments.
Questions? To me, this is a real pet peeve of mine. Tell me again when this project first was initiated at the city.
You still had here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I want it on the record.
It was 2007. From the records that I have, 2007.
2000. So is this the oldest capital projects of the records that you've got on here?
Yeah, I don't have all of the records for the oldest projects,
Okay.
unfortunately, but I have heard that Walton Ferry is the oldest.
Okay. So,
I have heard that Walton Ferry is the oldest, but I don't have all of those records from the initiations.
The oldest on this list.
Okay.
so the best that we can hope for is 800,000 in the grant to pay for whatever the new bid once the state gives approval.
Yes.
Now, so do you feel pretty confident that they're going to accept on the environmental reassessment, accept what our consultant has offered to do?
I believe so. She was the consultant from HDR. She was very knowledgeable, and she was on the call with TDOT and myself when we were discussing, and I felt very confident that she had fully addressed what they wanted to see out of it.
Yeah, I personally get more complaints on congestion that light synchronization, I believe, would help
It would.
than any of the capital projects on here. I mean, it's constantly people are asking me, when is this going to move forward? I know. So if they reject the consultant's proposal on environmental, I'm just trying to get the worst case scenario. What does that do to our project, and what does that do to the cost of it?
Worst case, I would say it would be approximately a 6-month delay at a minimum to go through a full environmental reassessment. And then you're looking at the engineering fees for that effort. So I don't know exactly what the cost of that would be offhand, but
It's what we call a cyclic project. I mean, it just depends on if they reject it, and then we do another round, like you said, 6 months. It's just, I mean, the expenses will just go up.
I know our friend, late Alderman Campbell, mentioned at one time that he was ready for the city just to fund this. If the state continues to give us roadblocks, now if they want us to do a complete new environmental assessment with, I don't know what that would cost. I would be interested in us exploring the possibility of the city just, I mean, I hate to spend it, but I mean, we've been on this thing since 2007, and all of the continued roadblocks, I for one would be, would consider the city just taking this over so we can get it done and improve the traffic congestion. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, excuse me. Another option, I mean, this project is very important. It provides the communication to have quote-unquote eyes on the ground at many of our traffic signals and to be able to manage that from a centralized location. This project does not provide it's been termed light synchronization since I've been with the city, but it doesn't provide the synchronized timing plan. It's actually a separate project. The second CMAC project is the one that provides the coordinated timing plans and the new radar detection. So another option could be to obtain an estimate from our on-call traffic engineer for a coordinated timing plan for one of the worst corridors. I mean, those are very expensive to obtain because they have to model those all out and the time that it takes to do that. But that is another option if this is delayed another iteration or two through TDOT.
So help me make sure that I understand. So the light synchronization is only one component of trying to improve the traffic congestion and a better traffic flow.
Yes, sir.
That's only one.
Yeah.
That does not include the radar, the timing, where that if you hit one light, you can hit multiple green lights and move forward.
That's correct, yes. The original plans from 2016, I think it might have been, there were some timings that were included in there, but they're significantly outdated. I mean, really, they say that timing should be updated within 5 years, and that's even a long time for them to maintain coordination.
So of the two, the light synchronization and the timing, what's the most expensive of those projects? And can you do one without the other?
We have two CMAT grants. The first CMAT grant is what has been coined as light synchronization. And then the second CMAT grant is the one that contains revised timings and then the radar detection. That second grant is much more expensive. Of course, radar is very expensive per intersection, so that's a significant portion of that cost. We did a coordinated timing plan with Sanders Ferry and Drakes Creek to coordinate those two signals to improve the flow through there. And that was, I want to say it was approximately $11,000 for those two to be coordinated. So that provides some frame of reference for what it might be for a corridor.
So should we move forward with the second part of that? I mean, you mentioned, I think, talking to the consultant and getting some estimates on the radar.
I could obtain an estimate separate from both of those CMAC projects just to provide improved timing in the meantime while we pursue both of those projects. If this first project is delayed, I mean, even if the first project isn't delayed, we won't have revised timing plans until the second project. So we could, in the meantime, seek coordinated timing plans.
We do have that second grant, by the way.
It's been approved, 100%.
How
Yes.
much is that?
That one,
But it does us no good if we don't have the...
You have to do A before you do B.
that second CMAC grant is $2,215,000. No, I'm sorry, 15,000. $2,215,000.
Grant number 2, is that just sitting there? How long will it sit there before somebody says, you're not using this, it's going away?
So that one is not just sitting there. I didn't include it on tonight's agenda simply because it's kind of riding on the tails of the first Cmat Grant. So a lot of the complications that were identified with TDOT through the first grant project process, a lot of the similar issues pertain to the second project. And so they have been working on design, and because it provides more equipment on different corners of our right-of-way, there are some other issues that they have been doing title searches for to resolve in the meantime. So they are making progress on that project, and the outcome of this first one will inform a lot for the second.
We won't lose that second grant.
No, we're making
If it
progress. It's current.
I know 6 months is an expedited period of time for TDOT. So, but if it's 12 months, then we just won't lose that second grant.
And the environmental document from the first project isn't related to the progress of the second project. So,
Thanks.
So you don't anticipate many problems with the second CMAC?
I think that we will be in better shape for the second CMAC, and it's a much newer project, so the design is more current with, well, it's in design, so it's current with all of the current standards, which was one of the problems with the first project because it was so old, it was not in compliance with their newer standards.
Would you inform the members of this committee when the state gives approval for that first CMAC?
Yes.
So that we're aware that
Yes.
it's been approved?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or if it's been delayed further? So
Okay.
follow up on that. Any additional questions on?
I just have a quick question. How much have we spent on the light synchronization project so far with consultants and studies and?
I'm sorry, I don't have that number tonight, but I can find that out and,
Okay, thank you.
and relay it.
Thanks,
Yes.
Sarah.
No problem. More questions?
Okay, moving on.
Okay. Drake's Creek and Stop 30. This project has been going through an environmental reevaluation process. It has been an iterative process, and our consultants just resubmitted on the 10th to address the most recent comments. I feel very confident that that will be the final iteration after some conversations that we've had with the consultant and with TDOT. So once they approve that, we should receive a notice to proceed to right-of-way. We have 12 tracks for that project, so our next step will be right-of-way acquisition. Provided we receive our notice to proceed shortly, we will have approximately a year and a half to construction for that process, and then time to completion would be estimated at 3 years.
I have a question on that one.
Chairman Cunningham.
Thank you. Sarah, do we have to have the court involved in that project at all because of the stream?
I believe the Corps has been involved in that project, yes,
Are
ma'am.
they showing favoritism to push it forward? Have they given us any pushback like the railroad that we should anticipate?
I have not seen any of that. To be honest, I wasn't as involved in this project before July, and this iteration of this reevaluation has been going on for a few months. So I would have to look back at the records.
Yeah, maybe we should get on top of that just
Okay.
in case.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
Give me
you,
again
Mr. Chairman.
the estimated timeline.
I would estimate a year and a half to construction and 3 years for completion of the project.
And that's to raise up that intersection to get it out of the floodplain.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And this money is, what's the percentage of, that the city is responsible for?
80-20.
Okay. Okay. Next, please.
All right. Center Point traffic signal. We have begun construction on that, or the TDOT has really, but that is in progress. They've been staking out. We've sent the letters necessary to NES to energize that intersection, so we are moving forward. Would also like to note that with that project, we did ask the TDOT and the design consultant to do a coordinated timing plan with the other two signalized intersections at 386 and Caldwell. So with the construction of this intersection, the three are very close, of course, and so this should relieve some of the complaints of congestion on Center Point. So I think it'll be a significant benefit. We are in construction, so our time to completion is 6 months. They actually have a completion date of June 30th with TDOT to wrap this project up. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, I saw the markings for the traffic light. Are they also going to make sure that timing for the traffic light on West Main Street
no.
and Center Point is done too? Because
No.
that thing, that backs up.
Yeah.
That backs up now.
They didn't feel that was within the range to include as part of this project. The other two were within less, quarter of a mile or less, whereas Main Street is further away, so they did not include it.
Okay.
It
Well,
was requested.
Hopefully that'll all work out.
Yeah. It's heavy over there.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Sarah.
Okay, Rocklin Road widening. We received our notice to proceed from TDOT on December 22nd with NEPA. So it's the environmental portion. We selected a consultant approximately a year ago maybe, and we're working through the scoping process. This project, I'm sure many of you know, was an older project from years ago that was recently reinitiated. And so the design has changed a little bit, and we are looking at designing the project all up front, but we will be phasing construction to kind of break up our financial obligation to alleviate some of those funding concerns. So we are still working through the scope and the design for that. I would anticipate finalizing that within the coming 2 months. I would anticipate having that finalized. It is anticipated that the cost of this project will significantly exceed what's currently funded, and so this will be similar to Walton Ferry that we discussed last time. This will be a project that we will be seeking additional funding on when they submit a call for projects for the next TIP cycle.
What's the funding now? What are you anticipating?
Right now, the funding level I want to say is $2 million. Sorry. No, it's better than that. It's $4.6 million. Currently, the TIP page shows a project estimate of $14 million for the project.
And just for the benefit of everybody in our constituency, what are the major upgrades to that road? What were the benefits of the project?
So there will be spot improvements at intersections, additional turn lanes. There will be a 10-foot multi-use walking trail along one side. And then we're looking at this being the last phase of the project because it will be the most expensive, but then there will be an extension of Rocklin Road from its current location in Imperial, close to where it intersects, at Main Street, and it will extend over to Center Point and connect there.
Behind?
The racetrack.
Okay.
Yes.
And with the walking trail, is that on the commercial side or the residential side? Is it on the railroad side or the other side?
I will have to verify that. I'm sorry. That was
okay.
more of a discussion since it hasn't been designed yet in that way, and I cannot recall offhand which side.
But will there be connectivity as a part of that project of sidewalks? Because where we've had new commercial come in and they've been required to put in sidewalks, that's great, but then you get to a commercial property that's been there for 40 years and there's no sidewalks. It's just like a culverted ditch, and
Right.
there's no way for pedestrians. It's just kind of dangerous for them.
Yeah.
So there will be that connectivity at least on one side of the road or the other.
That is the goal, is to provide the most connectivity possible.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I really appreciate everything that you have done for that road to keep it well lit, relining it. It's so appreciated, Sarah. So thank you for doing that, because it's a
You're
dangerous
welcome.
road at night. So thank you.
You're welcome.
That's right.
Okay, any other questions for Rocklin Road widening?
It's very exciting.
Okay, next, please.
All right, Walton Ferry, Old Shackle. Last time we were here, we discussed that we had received Amendment 2 from TDOT for signature, and the construction cost, of course, it had doubled. And so with the signature of Amendment 2, we were being required to pay a 20% contribution for the construction costs. Through that process of looking into the current funding level, it was found that we did not have the funds available to fully construct this project. And so we went through some discussion on possible options. I went back to TDOT and discussed those options with them. One of them was to go back and look at phasing construction of this project. That was probably one of the least favorable options for both for time and for cost purposes. Because the plans have not been designed for phased construction, so the traffic control plans and staging and all of those things would have to be designed, which would be a significant time and cost effort. So in speaking with them, we also, at that time had received the railroad contract for coordination with the railroad for TDOT in the city, and that added an additional $1.2 million to the project. In speaking with TDOT, that is actually going to be rolled into the right-of-way costs for this project, and so they are working on amending the amendment that they had sent us, and that will include those costs. And so what that all means is when they submit that amendment to us,
The more she talks, the nervous I get.
what it all comes down to, they're going to submit a revised amendment to us, and they will be requiring, with the execution of that amendment, they will be requiring $1,886, so approximately $1.9 million. We currently have $1.5 million budgeted. When I initially received the amendment, I spoke with Robert extensively on how we could come up or find the additional monies, and we have some options in our capital projects that we could utilize if the board decided. So one of those, we have the Indian Lake Road widening project that we have funding budgeted, but it has not been initiated, so those are unobligated funds. So they're approximately $240,000 in that project. And the other option that we have available is the new Shackle Island Old Drakes Creek Road project. We budgeted, I believe it was $402,000 for that project. But as Alderman Robertson, the mayor, and others discussed earlier, we are working in coordination with the county and asking them to manage that. And so we are utilizing $9,000 from the 402 for an opinion of probable cost for that project. So those funds are obligated. So we have $393,000 that are unobligated that we could utilize to cover that shortfall.
Now you're trying to get from 1.5 to 1.8.
Right.
Yeah.
1.9.
No,
Yeah.
400,000.
And since they're unobligated, it's for Since they're unobligated for Robert, he's indicated that it is as simple as making a notation and moving it to cover
You know,
that.
another possible revenue source that we talked about at the last meeting, it's in the minutes, is we have $280,000, I believe, in the land preservation fund. And we talked about that, you know, according to the master plan, we got plenty of parkland to be developed. So that money's just sitting out there. That's another source that if we need it for Walton Ferry, that we could use it to help us get that 400,000, because it's just sitting there.
I think there's,
But go ahead.
I think there's specific use for that land based on the ordinance that we passed.
We'd have to change
Yeah,
it,
you have to look at the ordinance.
and we'd have to, a new ordinance. We'd have to approve a
So
new
you would have
ordinance.
to amend
Yeah. But I'm
that
just saying,
to
if,
make it use, to use it for that purpose.
yeah, and we could use that to help us on the fire hall. I mean, that's a pot of money that we would have to, you know, file a new ordinance to use it. But, you know, with all of these projects running up, I hate to have pots of money, you know, where that we're going to have to burn down the general fund when we have maybe monies that we could use for that purpose.
Just don't have big enough lots.
Chairman,
Yes.
can I, Jesse,
I got a couple questions for her.
what about those funds that we're setting aside now for capital projects? Do we have anything in there yet?
The set aside, according to the
The
fund
set
balance
aside fund, yeah, I couldn't think
policy,
of the word.
is after we meet the comptroller's recommendation for our prudent reserve, and then any surplus after that would get split 50-50. So this year we may be able to put money into that capital reserve, but first we're hitting the comptroller's recommendation, which we haven't yet. So we don't have money in that fund yet, but that was the point of that fund, so that when we get these years where we have surplus, we can put them in that reserve to have, but we haven't built that reserve yet.
Okay,
The
so-
original estimate, I think, was 5 years and 8 months to get us to the comptroller's recommendation, but it looks like we'll
For
be
the
there.
general fund, right?
Yeah, but I think we're there now.
Yeah, well, so will we have a better idea come the end of June, or what that number looks like?
Yeah, even with the mid-year budget adjustments that we're going to do when we do that review, we're going to touch on how we finished last year and what we look like we're going to be at this year. So we'll know, what we're in the ballpark, what we're going to look like the end of this year.
So next month in the next month or so?
Yes,
Or
ma'am.
Oh, good, okay. So that might be another
Another,
bucket that we may want to be able to tap into, or plan to tap into.
So what are we getting for the 1.2 million to the railroad? What are we getting out of that, other than write a big check to CSX?
Essentially permission to do the project in the vicinity of the railroad.
Pardon me?
Essentially, we get permission to do the project in the vicinity of the railroad, but they do their own traffic control. They have their own engineering, and so that's all included for the railroad portion.
Because we're not we're not paving anything over the tracks or anything. It's just for them to manage when we need it stopped for whatever reason, or,
Yes, because the project does work right up to the railroad, and so they would provide traffic control during those times.
400,000 is what we're looking at, approximately 400,000.
Yes.
So what's the next step on that project?
So the next step is we will be looking at seeking additional funding through the MPO. When they call for projects for the next TIP, we will be submitting this project as well as Rocklin Road and possibly others for additional funding. With that, during that time frame, this railroad coordination came a little bit unexpected, not unexpected, a little late. Originally, this project was intended to be let this last fall, but when they sent over their coordination contract, what was contained within it actually extends it approximately another 12 months. I spoke with TDOT today, And the Railroad Engineering has approved the plans with no exception, so now TDOT will be coordinating with the railroad on approval, real estate action for property rights, just so that they can work up to the tracks. So that effort will take, like I said, approximately 12 months. So through that 12 months, they'll be working on that. We will be seeking additional funding. And then once they finalize the railroad coordination and wrap up any additional right-of-way that they're working on, then we will be able to TDOT will let the project for construction. Yes, I would say we have about a year and a half, conservatively, to construction. Yeah. Oh. Well.
Hope not, but I mean, if they're saying 12 months,
Yeah.
I would at least double that.
The gentleman I spoke with at TDOT today said he estimated a year, and I said, well, I'd prefer to be conservative. He said a year and a half is conservative, so maybe it will be 3. Based on that, I anticipate completion of the project within 4.5 years. Construction of that project will be very time consuming. I would anticipate a 3-year project.
Can I start it first, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Chairman Brown.
I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you. But, I mean, it's just, as I go around this town, and I know that every elected official in this room, and probably the fire chief, Jesse may not have been here long enough to be catching any of that yet, but we're almost a laughing stock when people talk about old Shackle Island and Gallup Road. I mean, I have folks every day say, well, when are they going to get that started? It's supposed to start 25 years ago. And I say, yeah, I know. I'm not sure. I was told last year it would be this year. This year it would be next year. So if you can give me a couple simple figures, just curious. We're at what point, dollar-wise, totally for this project that is estimated at this point? And what is our part? Or what will it be? Because it honestly seems like the target moves around a lot.
Yeah. The overall project estimate is, sorry, I did bring it. It is from the last amendment that they sent plus the 1.2 million that came in at it was approximately 15.3.
Okay. Don't run off.
I'm not.
15.3. We hadn't heard about this 1.2. When did we find out about the 1.2? That was like new news, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's
It
always
was.
nice. To go home and find out you got another bill that you can't pay. Mm-hmm. When we started talking, I don't want to talk 30 years ago, but when we really kind of got the ball rolling, that's almost funny too, because it hasn't rolled much. What was our first original starting estimate? I mean, you may not have that, but
I don't have the first one here.
Arlene says she's remembered. We'll throw it out there. I think I know, but
The right-of-way cost, our share of the right-of-way cost was 1.2. So that was 20% of the total right-of-way.
right.
So figure
So it was about
close
5.
to 5 million,
Yeah.
maybe like 4 point something. And then at that point, this was in 2011, 2012 timeframe, the construction part of that, the construction part of the cost was in addition to that, was going to be another $5 million. So we already paid for the right-of-way.
We paid our portion.
Yes, we already paid for our portion. We put that aside, gave it to them, and supposedly they finished the right-of-way part of it, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right?
They haven't
Oh, my
finished right
goodness
away now.
gracious.
They're still
So that-
working on right away.
So that was in 2011, 12.
Okay.
So that was supposed to take a year or two for them to do that, and then the construction part was supposed to start pretty well after, soon after that, after they did their completed their engineering part and all that, design and all that stuff.
Okay.
But previous to that, previous to the right-of-way, we were on the, GDOT was on the hook, paid for about $250,000 or $300,000 of some type of design and engineering that they bore 100% of that cost.
Right.
So
So we
that's-
went, seems like the total figure, if I remember right, was like 9.6 million
Yes, yes,
something. It
and that-
wasn't quite 10.
and our part was 20%.
Yeah, so we went from, we'll say, we'll use 9.5 to make it nice and round, to 15.3.
No, more.
No, her total was 15.3.
That was just for the construction, right?
No.
Now, that includes the railroad
That includes right-of-way?
Yes.
and the railroad.
Oh, okay.
But we didn't
Yeah.
know about.
Yes, that's correct. Then,
Yeah. The construction estimate increased to just over 9 million.
Okay. So it
And-
almost doubled.
And at this number here, you just said, I think, a minute ago, 4 years.
Until completion of construction, yes.
And at this number here, 2 years from now, that could go up.
They could.
Okay? There comes a time, and this is probably the wrong thing to say, but some of my folks that talk to me every day won't care, that you cut your losses and you get out. And I don't know that it's not that time. I've been driving through that intersection for a long time. Doesn't really bother me too bad. But it keeps getting fatter and fatter and fatter. I don't know if I'd vote for that. I don't know if we could do it, but there does come a time that I think you have to think about that. And we're at 15.3, you
Certainly.
know, there.
Yeah, I think about that all the time, especially the synchronization project. One thing we have to be sure is that we don't have to reimburse the state or the Greater Nashville Regional
Yeah.
Council for the expenses that they've incurred. Oh, when Pat said it a year and a half ago, it made me think.
It's, we
So our most,
threw it out there before. Go ahead.
so most of our exposure would be the 1.2 that we already spent?
No, we would be responsible for reimbursing all projects costs up to this point.
The whole thing? Even the right-of-way?
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What do you think that would be?
Based on what's in the amendment, it would probably be around 6 million.
Answers that question.
Oh,
Yeah.
ouch.
Put your car in the shop for a battery and you come away spending $1,500 for a whole new electrical system. That's kind of where we're at. You know. I don't envy your job handling that right there, you know. But I appreciate. Do you think, this will be my last question, because I got barbecue at home that I want to go eat. Do you think there's any more surprises? I mean, $1.2 million is like you open a Christmas gift and it's a bad one, it doesn't fit. So, is there any more of those coming that you think, maybe?
Not that I know
I'm
of.
not gonna hold you to it, but I just want to guess.
Yeah, not that I anticipate outside of construction costs going up. So what's in the current amendment for current construction estimate, that may go up, as you've said, by the time it's constructed. So we would see that at the tail end. As far as railroad, I don't know that they had received an estimate from railroad, in the last 10 years. I don't know. The original estimate, I believe, that they had included was $250,000, which of course we see that's increased significantly. So now that that's been considered, unless there are additional costs that come from utilities, I wouldn't anticipate any other surprises.
Is
But
that a possibility? Do they have to move poles? And, I mean,
there are several utilities included in this project. Yeah.
You have to move that light.
Yeah.
Move a big pipe underground that HED owns. Big pipe.
Yeah.
this has nothing really, this has a lot to do with that project, but it has nothing to do with what they're talking about tonight. But I know I've talked to several of the business owners on each side of that fence down there, and there's a lot of concern what's going to happen, during that 4-year period now, of our businesses, traffic. I know there's plans for that. I hope there's good plan. I hope we as a city, and I don't know who that would be. Maybe it would be Mr. Kirk. He's our ECD guy, to talk to those individual businesses and let them know that, hey, you are on our radar. We're not forgetting you. We know this is obviously probably going to happen, and we're going to do everything we can to make traffic flow, to get people to you. I run a business down there. People come to me from the other side, but, Walton Ferry, obviously that's going to be tight. There'll be some times that they just won't be able to get traffic through there, I'm sure. So I don't know if there's anything we can do to help those businesses, but I would urge the front office, which is 2 guys, to figure out how to stroke those businesses a little bit and let them know that we're paying attention, and we know that's going to disrupt their lives. So, thanks.
So one last question, just
Sure.
to make sure I understand. So the city's portion of that project, including right-of-ways and construction, is how much?
Including right-of-way and construction, the 20%,
The city's
What?
cost.
$1,894,886 is the 20% cost, just for 20% of the construction, and then 20% of the overage that was identified for right-of-way with the addition of the railroad.
Okay. And if we stopped it, we may be liable up to $6 million.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and without any more surprises,
You ever have your butt cracked before?
regular
Yeah.
delays
Where it
for
cracked.
whatever
Yeah.
reason,
It's
what
15.3,
percentage of
it's
cost
going to
do
go
you
up.
think it would increase? 5%? 5% per year?
The construction costs are,
Like, if it was delayed another 2 years, and
Oh.
then as construction goes up, if you figure each year that it's delayed, the cost of the project grows 5%? Like, what's a rough percentage?
I would typically say 5%, but it's been a little unpredictable
So it
this
could be
past
more.
year. It could be more.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, every once in a while, if we can show some progress, maybe if we can take down the Rhino station there, like we did the bank, that shows a little movement. But, all right, thank you, Sarah. Let's move on to the next. Yeah.
All right. Next, we have Drake's Creek Roundabout. We recently received in November the preliminary plans, the 30% complete plans for review, and we had very little comment, and so they are progressing on. We anticipate having the right-of-way plans within the next 3 months, possibly sooner, but within the next 3 months. And then at that point, we'll know which parcels will be affected and at what level, and then the city will actually coordinate acquisition of those parcels. So that's the next step.
And a lot of that project is being paid from the impact fees, the voluntary impact fees from Durham,
Yes.
from Ivy Point, from all of those
Yes.
developments in there.
Yes, the current funding level for that project, predominantly from impact fees, is $900,000. So a portion of it is from our stormwater budget. I think
Because it's going over a creek.
that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. So I would say our time for construction on that project is approximately a year. That'd put us at January 2023. Our time to completion, I would estimate at 2.5 years for that.
2.5 years.
For completion, so finishing the design process, acquiring right-of-way, and construction.
Okay. I thought construction was planning to begin in 1/23,
Yes,
and it'll take 2 years after that to complete it. So,
another year and a half for construction.
okay, so 2025.
I'm sorry, July 2024?
Okay. Sounds better. Okay.
It may be faster than that. So a lot of these are simply estimates, just depending on how things go.
Okay.
The acquisition of right-of-way may go much faster.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pickleball. We've already done the fire hall, so pickleball.
Been waiting on pickleball. Get excited about it. You don't need much money. Is that a hard activity?
Pickleball does not cost $15 million. I am here tonight to, basically this is information presenting. I think that's my task. We've been working as a staff for several months with Jesse, with the mayor, with some members of the pickleball community. You all have probably been contacted by people wanting pickleball. We've been contacted by people wanting pickleball. Jason's got a graph, if you can bring that up real quick, from our Parks Master Plan that shows about kind of 3/4 of the way to the right there. With 50, this is the sheet that said, what programming, activities, events would you like Hendersonville to add? Pickleball is not in the outdoor music 159 category, but it's 51 pickleball. When you combine pickleball, tennis, indoor tennis, you see that as far as active sports go, is one of the most responded to areas that people felt we need to add. I would say pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the country. Gallatin is building courts. Goodlettsville has totally gotten rid of their tennis courts behind the Civic Center that they have and putting pickleball on it. Many communities have them. We do not. We've been looking for 2 years at grants and different things. We started looking at the old inline hockey rinks at Saunders Ferry, whichever way you want to say it. Got denied on a couple of grants there. We're having a harder and harder time getting grants because of our socioeconomic situation with the median income of our city. But that may have been a good thing, because in meeting with the pickleball folks in the community, they really didn't want to drive to Saunders Ferry to play pickleball. But we just saw an asphalt place there where they could have their own space with restrooms already built. So if you look on this packet that I passed out to you, page 2 of that packet is kind of a design of what we've looked at, trying to find a place to put 6 pickleball courts. We've looked at 2 options at this time. One of them is at the old inline hockey rink that we're getting rid of there at Veterans Park. It's on page 3 of your packet. The plan there that we have to protect Mary's Magical Place is to build a berm around the playground and leave that space there as our plan was to leave it as grass athletic field space that would still be lit. And talking with the design team from Los Design that was designing the flood protection plan, there is a potential to put pavement on half of that there in that red box you see on page 3 and leave that for pickleball courts. You would still be digging down some to put the asphalt there, and the remainder of that area to the north there, that red box, would be still grass. Obviously we have restrooms there and parking already as well. Another option we have.
Excuse me, what about lights at that facility? Do we already have the lights?
So there are lights there. A part of the flood plan, protection plan, was to relocate some of those lights and convert them to LED. That was in the original cost estimate of that project. I don't know where we're at on that. That's been 2 or 3 years, and I'll come back to that in just a minute as well for this site, some other things that come up with that. But
okay, I'll wait.
on the next page, page 2, the next page of your packet shows the area at Memorial Park. If you look about middle of the page where it says City of Hendersonville and there's some green numbers, that's the area where the current field that we have that we utilize mostly for lacrosse is located. This was the second option we thought of, where we already have parking and restrooms available, and we would not be having to deal with any FEMA issues that we would have to deal with. Going back to the page before, The flood protection plan at Mary's Place is still under review from FEMA. As far as I know, they just changed teams that were even coordinating it with FEMA. So beyond what the plan we submitted is, correct me if I'm wrong, because just correct me if I say something stupid, please. I don't know if we changed what we submitted to FEMA as far as asphalt, if we would have to resubmit to FEMA. You see where I'm coming from? And we've been under review for a year on the Mary's Place plan as it is there. So on the other page, we would have to get permission from the Corps at Memorial Park. And you're correct, there are no current lights there at Memorial Park. For pickleball, you're talking about a different style of lighting. If you continue on your packet to the next page, page 4, Bartlett, Tennessee, just built a complex, and you can see those lights that they have there. It's almost like street lights as compared to the stadium lights that we have for athletic fields in other areas. So it's not nearly as expensive of an option to light such a court. You know, we've been working on ways to accommodate folks. We had a meeting with the mayor and Jesse. Steve Black in the community was kind of the head of the pickleball group that met with us, and we've worked with them to accommodate them at the tennis courts. Had a regular set schedule this fall. Anywhere between 20 to 40 people would show up 2 to 3 times a week. I will tell you that tennis players and pickleball players do not play nice together at all. That is a fact. I don't know any other way to say it. It just does not. At some point, we will have to get them separated and provide their own space for everyone's sanity. Is it a revenue generator? Do I feel like we could bring in events? Yes. I do think we would be a spot for tournament play from outside events at some point. You know, just like every other park project, I could bring you 100 of them. It's a matter of what you all feel are priorities and what we feel are needs and wants and desires, I guess is the best way to put it. Like I said, I think my job and our staff's job is to provide you information to make decisions.
Chairman Brown?
Thank you.
Let me ask Jesse, did I say anything stupid? Okay. Mayor, is that a conflict with anything we've gone over?
I don't think you said anything stupid tonight.
Thank you. Tonight. I would say too, one more thing I would say, we worked really hard with our relationship with the schools. We tried to accommodate pickleball indoors over the winter because they used to have a large group that played at First Baptist Church along with basketball, and that's gone away during the COVID time, and I doubt that it's going to come back, honestly. But none of our schools that we really utilize on the days we can utilize them are suitable for the size they need for pickleball courts. It's really hard to get into a high school size gym on a routine day of the week, if that makes sense. And we're maxed out with our basketball league during this time of year for school usage. And that's all I got so far.
Chairman Brown?
Thank you. Keep talking, you'll say something.
I know. I will.
Yeah, I know you pretty well. When you're talking about Veterans Park, we're moving inline hockey because it's been flooded out. And we can do pickleball courts there, and water will get over them. It really won't hurt them. And basically, is what you're saying. If that happens,
I'm not saying that. I think they'll still get wet. I think it would be a determination. Are we worried about what water would do to them over time?
Yeah.
Compromising the courts, because you're going to put down asphalt and then you're going to put down a surface similar to a tennis court on top of it. So it's going to get wet there. I think that's a fact.
Probably at some time.
I would compliment those two maps, the Veterans and Memorial. JP, the GIS person in the planning department, he's fantastic. If you ever need to know where the property lines are or where the floodplains are, that's your man. Go through key 3 though to get to him.
And I don't know if you've thought about it. We've talked about this piece of property before, and nothing's happened with it. We talked about it, I know, for another dog park. Have you thought about that out on Caldwell Lane?
Well, I mean, that was bought because 10 homes got flooded out there.
I know it's
So
a
I
floodplain.
think we would run the risk of the same things. Also there, we have no parking, no restrooms. I think that's a critical component. If we're trying to get this up and running sooner rather than later, parking and restrooms would basically double or triple the cost, I would think, based on what we've built the last few years.
Be a good place to put another dog park.
Be a great place for a pavilion and a dog park.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chairman Cunningham, do you have a question?
This may sound like a silly question, but what is pickleball? Is it like tennis?
Pickleball is very similar. I call it kind of a combination between tennis and badminton.
Oh, okay.
Because you're playing basically like tennis, but it's in a smaller area with a ball that doesn't travel as fast as a tennis ball. It can be a fast sport because of the proximity to each other, but it's played on a smaller court. You can basically put 2 pickleball courts on 1 tennis court. So
'cause
it's great for people that might love tennis and might have maybe possibly aged out into.
Yeah, a lot of some of my older customers, they play the pickleball,
Yeah,
and it's like the older adults that are playing, and they just like love it.
yeah, people are
I've never
addicted
heard
to
of
it basically.
before.
Yep.
So, what about, have you considered maybe that area by the senior center maybe to put something over there?
Excuse me.
I think it's a great place for something, but there again, you're going to end up having to do things like parking and restrooms.
Well, they have the parking there already. I
They
mean,
do have parking, but if you combine with what they have with what the crowd is going to be there for pickleball, I'm for anything.
Okay,
I'm for anything.
I'm
Yeah.
just throwing out an idea.
I think that's
I have no idea if it would
that
work
piece of
or not.
land. I don't want to speak out of turn. This may be when I say something stupid, but that's an untapped, even thought of resource that we own. I mean, there's so many things that
That's
could
a
be
great
done
idea.
there.
Yeah, because a lot of multiple customers of mine, they do this, and I said, well, what's the attraction? It's, like you said, it's a closer environment than running like crazy for tennis, and they just love it. They love it.
Yeah, I think that's a very viable place. I think the board would need to decide if they want to take up that valuable piece of land to put park activities on it and support it with the infrastructure to go with it.
Yeah.
As we know from getting it appraised, it's pretty valuable.
You
Yeah.
probably said this, but this would give you how many pickleball courts?
6 on page 2 of that packet, kind of what you're looking at. There's 6 on that page.
Okay.
I mean, that's what we thought of because originally the site at Veterans Park, 6 would fit in that space. That's what we were looking at. We can build as
Could you
many as we
expand
want.
that to 8 if you?
You would
The
use
only
up.
thing I'm saying that, if pickleball is becoming that hot an item, and it is, it's not hot with me, it's like, I'm not a rugby guy either, but, I know that's a pretty hot item in our city right now. But
Yeah.
if it's gonna be that hot item, then I would rather estimate a little bit bigger and have 8 courts maybe than 6, when you're already building and laying asphalt and doing it, it's a little bit cheaper to do it when you're doing, than go back and
I would agree with that.
So, I don't know.
And you've got the room to do that at either of these 2 sites. 6 is not going to take up the whole current grass space.
Okay.
When we talk about the grass space at Memorial, getting rid of it, in that case, you would keep the plan intact at Veterans that we had to convert that current spot to grass. And we're also, if we get the LPRF grant, helping to provide lacrosse with a place that's on turf they could play at night also elsewhere. So I'm not as concerned about losing that grass space.
So these are the only 2 locations that you've identified that are feasible for the pickleball?
These are the 2 locations that we thought, if we want to get it up and running as soon as possible, that already has restrooms and parking and not going to, somebody asked, could you go to Volunteer Park on the other side of the creek? We could do that, but there again, parking, restrooms, major site work on that hill there as compared to areas that are flat, basically ready to pave with little site work and already have restrooms, parking, and in one case already has lights. So
And what's the total, you put some numbers here, what
on
would
page
you
one,
anticipate?
I mean, this is a very rough estimate. We literally just got a paving estimate yesterday on the fly from Roger Group, I think. Sarah, is that correct? Sheila? Okay. So those totals add up, if you go the high end, around $235,000. Now keep in mind that does not include site work. So site work would be part of the plan anyway with Mary's Place, building the berm there and getting rid of all the asphalt and grading and things. Site work obviously would have to be done at the other location at Memorial. We got irrigation there we'd have to cut off and some other site work that would have to be done. That is a very rough estimate. I'm confident of the surfacing of 6 pickleball courts estimate. I'm confident of that once asphalt was put down, that's what that would cost. I'm confident on a fence price. I'm pretty confident on lights price, and I'm pretty confident on nets and posts, but the other parts are kind of unknowns.
So, if we decide to go to veterans, we may have to get a FEMA to look back at the burn plan.
That is
correct?
my best understanding. I mean, would you agree? They might not have to review it again, but what I'm telling you is it's been under review for a year, and we have no idea of where we're even at this point, if that makes sense.
But as far as cost, not discounting the flooding that Chairman Brown mentioned about, it would probably be cheaper to do it at veterans. Because the lights are there, everything, everything's there.
The first time. As long as you're willing to come back when it cracks and resurface and things like that.
And I don't want to do that, so that is a.
But that's something we deal with at tennis. We try to resurface those cracks once every 3 years on each set of 4 courts. It's just I think if we do that, you're correct, it will be less expensive because of the lights alone. But we have to go into it with the understanding of we know that that's going to flood there.
Well,
and I personally we have so little parkland. We have a lot of parkland, as you made reference to earlier, from the master plan, they would tell us we have a lot of parkland. What we don't have is a lot of parkland that's not in a floodplain that can be used for projects like this. There's just no, I mean, you can say find us a place at Drake's Creek Park in the floodplain. Senior center is a great idea.
yeah,
Volunteer Park's a great idea on the second section. I'm just bringing information to try to get the conversation started. I don't think this is something we're going to come next month and say we need an ordinance for $300,000 to build pickleball courts.
Would they go to Sanders Ferry Park?
That's what I said.
Would they go to Sanders Ferry Park? I don't want to get waived.
I think the mayor can vouch for this, and Jesse, when we had that conversation with citizens, they were not real thrilled about the idea of going to Sanders Ferry Park.
Yeah, they considered that as an alternative to tennis courts and Veterans Park. So Sanders Ferry Park is obviously the furthest one, from the center of the
Put
city.
them third, basically.
Yeah,
It would
yeah.
be third.
If it were Sanders Ferry Park versus, out toward Gallatin, Sanders Ferry Park might be the better choice. Would you?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, if I lived in Saundersville Road or Blue Ridge, or I'd go to Gallatin before I'd go to Saunders Ferry Park.
And some of them are.
Gallatin pickleball?
They're under construction.
Well, let's move along.
I know, we can't let that happen, right?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
You mentioned about attracting tournaments. How many courts would you need to attract tournaments to be able to add some revenue
I think
to the
6 is
city?
a healthy number to start, but if you want to really get a really good sized tournament, you're going to need probably 8 to 12.
So in other words, 6 would be a good start. So we need to make sure we have enough room to put an additional 6,
I mean,
if it starts.
the way I look at it, if this continues to grow the way it is, look at what we have with tennis. For many, many years, 12 tennis courts has been enough. I think we're in a situation now where eventually we know that we're probably ready to expand that. So, but whoever thought 12 was going to be good for a long time at the beginning was pretty smart, because it's lasted a long time with 12. With nobody, y'all don't get any phone calls daily saying we need to add 4 tennis courts.
No, I don't get it.
So, I mean, I would agree that if we're going to do it, what I don't want is to ask you all to spend a lot of money, and then only 4 times a year when we have major tournaments are 12 pickleball courts full.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I asked the question.
I can't guarantee that.
It would be wise to do the, sounds like it would be wise to do the 6th, and then if that's like exploding, we could always add to it, but make sure that we put it in a place where we can add to it if we need to.
Yes, ma'am.
So that not 6 aren't at one park and another 6 are 3 or 4 miles down the road someplace else.
That would be really bad.
No, that wouldn't.
And that's what
that wouldn't work.
a lot of cities are having to do that, because they've maxed out their space, and they're having to just go in a parking lot and resurface a parking lot for for pickleball courts up next to a building somewhere.
Have you looked into the possibility, or can you look into the possibility, if we do decide to do it, say, for instance, at Veterans, because they have the infrastructure there to be able to support that, to be able to make it flood resistant, or to be able to build it where there is a berm and be able
Now
to
that I do think would
protect
trigger,
it.
I think that would trigger another FEMA review.
Oh,
Because what we've designed now is a berm to go around the
I'm just trying to
playground.
protect an asset
I
if
mean,
we
I don't-
decide to go
would you
move
agree with
forward
that?
with it.
I think if we added any kind of rise at all at that look, because right now what they've designed creates a 0 rise upstream and downstream. So if we start playing around with that at all, I think it would trigger another FEMA.
Okay, that was just an idea.
Yep.
I don't know anything about flood.
Chairman Shirley?
Thank you. So with the tennis courts, whenever they flooded, have you had much lift? Like, I've played on the court since I was little, and there's been cracks since I was little. So, I mean, it seems that the 2 locations, that Veterans Park is more advantageous and more cost effective. Over at Memorial, my concern would be parking, that you wouldn't have enough parking because it's pretty maxed out just from tennis during the season. But, I mean, this would be a great opportunity. So paving is your minimal amount of cost anyway. So, and it should be viewed as an ongoing expense for maintenance. So if we can absorb the cost of a flood every couple of years, but how much lift have you had on the tennis courts? Many?
The back 4 tennis courts need to be totally
Redone?
reconstructed at this point, but that's, since they got put in, they were destroyed during 2010, and now they're showing whatever happened underneath them during that time is probably rearing its head at this point.
So, okay, so 10, or over 10 years later, we're experiencing, so they were still usable.
Correct. I mean, we're using them today.
Right.
We have to
So
be
I guess
careful
that's
what we
what I'm
put there.
saying, is that there could be multiple flooding events, and there might be some cleanup to get the courts, whatever.
I think we would have to be very diligent in our plans to do, like with tennis courts, until the last 3 years, resurfacing has just occurred haphazardly. We tried to get on we've got 4 sets of courts, four banks of courts times 3. We've tried to say, okay, we're going to rotate 30. We've put 30,000 every year in there to do one bank every 3 years. And I think in this case, it would have to be you'd have to really be diligent.
Yeah.
To
Well,
do
and I
that.
think that's great to be planning for, because it's utilized. It's just like a baseball field or a football field. There's ongoing expenses. Just because it's a hard surface doesn't mean it's going to last forever. So, I really think Veterans Park is the most viable option with the least amount of cost, in my layman's opinion, just because you have all the infrastructure there and the parking, because pickleball will take a lot of parking.
They will.
But I think it's a great opportunity for our city, you know, and with the, going in with the expectation of, okay, here's where it's located, we're going to have these ongoing expenses, and maybe if the pickleball community is invested, they will participate in a way like the rugby community has and provide support.
I would hope so.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any pickleball folks listening, you know, I'd love to hear from them and see what their thoughts are and how they can help bring this idea to fruition. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. I think it's a really interesting idea. But I don't think Memorial Park is an option. There's just not enough infrastructure there to support it. So.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, what do we need to do next? I mean, I think there's support from this committee that I sense for this. I would like for us to look at the senior center. So Andy, if we tried to use the senior center, could we use their restrooms?
Ooh, I don't know if you're going to want that. I don't know off the top of my head. Off the top of my head, I don't know what their nighttime hours are. I know pickleball will want to play until 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So if we were to do that, I think we would have to hire, like we do in the school gyms, some type of supervisor to open up the senior center, and we'd have to get with Ms. White on that for sure. I don't think we can just leave the senior center restrooms open for people to go in and out.
Okay. So Mayor, what's our next step?
During the day, I don't think that would be a problem, if that makes sense.
The good news about the senior center restrooms is that there's an exterior door close to the senior center restrooms, but we don't have anybody over there on a regular basis, and that would be, and you know, the seniors aren't, we would have to get their permission. I think the next step is give us your top 2, maybe 3 locations, and then we figure out what Andy's done here and apply that to each of those locations, and wait for FEMA to get back to us, specific to Veterans Park, because like you said, there's and I'm sitting here listening to this. There's good and bad with every location. And the longer I listen, I think, well, that's a good point. Well, that's a good point. Well, that's a good point. I think an overall estimated cost of each location would be helpful. How much effort is it to figure that one out?
I mean, it's not going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah. The surfacing is the same everywhere.
Okay.
But maybe pick your top 2 or 3. But we're not going to be able to do anything with veterans until we hear from FEMA. We wouldn't be able to do anything with it's not going to move quickly. But I think that these estimates specific to the 2 or 3 locations might be a good step.
And I personally would like for the staff, after looking at the locations and considering cost and already available facilities, to bring us back a recommendation. I mean, I would like to hear your recommendation on where's the best place for this, and this is the estimated cost.
Okay.
I mean, y'all are the experts. I mean, and you know the facilities.
No,
better than I do.
I'm fine with making a recommendation. I think what we would make recommendations based on what you all feel is most important. Is it location? Is it cost of the project? Is it proximity to town? I mean, I think once we get to that point, I might ask for some further guidance, maybe.
Is it low maintenance?
Is it lowest maintenance? I don't know, maybe y'all, somebody besides me, if we consider the senior center, I don't know if that it's our property, so I don't know if planning has to approve any kind of, if there's anything. I think it's already approved for recreation use anyway, based on the deed that we got the property, but.
There would have to be quite a bit of site work done. You would have to have quite a bit of pushing dirt. It would be expensive. I mean, you would have to almost master plan that property to get the biggest bang.
That's kind of what I was getting at.
The biggest bang for your buck, but with veterans, with you have all the existing infrastructure there. In my mind, the most expensive portion is the lights, right? So we've got some of the lighting there, right? So then your ongoing maintenance is paving, which we know that we're going to have to replace every 3, 5, 10 years, depending on the amount of water that's going to lift it. So if that's your most expensive expense, it's the least disruptive to our park system to have it over there because you've got the infrastructure there already.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do think it will be important to look at all the options,
Yeah,
not knowing how long FEMA is going to take.
well, and there's that.
And I think that's the pickleball community. I think that is their biggest criteria. What's fastest? That's not the way we do business because we want this to last. What's fastest 40 years ago was building 4 tennis courts at Memorial Park. Fortunately, they didn't do what was fastest. They did what made the most sense and built 12.
Well, what have been their suggestions for the fastest? What have they brought forward?
They like tennis. They like veterans.
But I think those 2 locations would be fine. I don't think the Saunders Ferry option was appealing. We hadn't really gone into the senior center.
Well, temporarily, would Saunders Ferry work? Is there a
I think we've got the temporary kind of figured out for now. We'll see how it goes this late spring and summer, and being able to kind of make some adjustments at tennis. We certainly can't take away from tennis. Uh-oh, here, I must have, sorry.
Everybody hide.
So we just had Kimberly Horn come in and do a whole study of our parks. They have the drafting capabilities to lay out, like a 6-court system, and it would probably be a good idea to see if it grows, and we want to do maybe 8 or 10 to take that into consideration too. So we may be able to re-engage Kimberly Horn for a minimal fee to come in and give us some pros and cons and some overlays of those sites, and then we can assess that at a staff level and bring back a recommendation. We have our mid-year budget coming up, so we can put some money in professional services, and we can start to tackle it right now. The unknown question about Mary's Magical Place is we just don't know how long it's going to take FEMA to do their work, but we can take that into the consideration as well. But I think it would be very nice if we could have some illustrations of 6, 8, 10, and 12 court layouts, and then we can make a presentation back to the board.
Yeah, with maintenance figures.
Do we have a motion? Do you need a motion, or can you just do that?
Oh, we'll take care of
Okay,
it.
sounds
Thank
good.
you. I think that's a great idea.
Great, excellent, good discussion.
So I didn't say something stupid.
No,
All right.
you done good.
Very good.
Yeah, the inline hockey, just to update, I know we're near finished on that project, so
Yes, and I just wanted to say thank you to Andy, too. He's put in a lot of time just to get us to the place where we're at right now with pickleball. Inline hockey, we had a great tournament out there. We actually just met with the Hockey Association a couple days ago. So after having the tournament, they said they've had players tell them it's the best location, best facility that they've ever played at in their life, which was, we had bad weather the first day. But that was very encouraging to hear that, and they can't wait to come back again. So that was very good news. The contractor's working on some punch list items, so we're going through punch lists. Bleachers are getting set up. But besides bleachers, it's just punch list items right now. Looks really great. Everything's working good. So we're going to just continue to work through the punch list, and we should be wrapped up here pretty soon.
there was some damage, wasn't there, from the storm? Has that been, insurance going to take care of that?
Yeah, so the bleachers, they were in construction. They weren't secured down, and the wind came over, blew the bleachers over. The contractor's taking care of it through insurance. The lead time, I think, is around 4 months, maybe 5 months to get those bleachers back. But we can open the rest of it up absent those bleachers, so that's what we plan to do.
So when do we start to allow the local leagues to use the facility? And yeah.
We'll probably have about, I'm going to guess, maybe 2 months before we're completely opened up every day. We're considering some additional safety netting because at the tournament, the pucks were flying out in locations. We thought we wouldn't have that much activity with the pucks flying out, so we've gotten quotes on those, and we're working through if we can do some additional changing rooms there too, because there's no changing rooms. So working with the Hockey Association, and they're willing to contribute and help us with that. So we've started those conversations with them, but we think that would be a priority to get some of that, especially the safety netting up maybe before it's open 100%.
And when is the estimated dedication? Do we have a date for that yet? Okay.
Yeah, I don't have
All right. So this spring? This spring. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for the inline hockey? Jesse, I want to thank you. I know that because of our engineering staff is so shorthanded, you came in and took up the project to take the load off of Sarah and her staff, and I want to thank you. You saved us a lot of money doing that, carrying a double load. So I want to express my appreciation to you and working with Andy. And I think it's been a successful project.
Yeah, thank you. And I absolutely could not have done it without Andy's help. He gets a lot done. So thank you, Andy.
And Mary's Magical Place, we're waiting on FEMA. We've already heard about that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Andy pretty much covered it.
Yeah. Any other capital projects that anyone would like to bring up? Yeah, Mayor.
What you're not seeing is the amount of work that Andy and Sarah have put into all these projects. I mean, it's just absolutely phenomenal.
Yes.
With the transportation projects, it's multiple phone calls to TDOT and finding out where the situation is, and then following up with that person who's holding things up, and following up with the person who's holding up that person. And with Andy, obviously the fruits of his labor we're seeing on a regular basis. So they've done a tremendous amount of work. It's been very gratifying to see. Yeah.
Very good. All right. Any other business before the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn, and second by Chairman Brown. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.